But let's start with big news out of Montreal and bring in Renaud Lavoie, friend of the show status, if I've ever seen it in my life, Renaud. But I'll dive right into it. I hope you're well. During the process of finding this new general manager, was Kent Hughes considered the clear front runner this entire time, or how did this sort of develop if he wasn't the front runner to begin with?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jackie, because, for Kent Hughes, it's way different than the other candidates. Why? Because he was an owner of a management company called Quartex, and he represents, obviously, and he was representing a lot of players around the NHL. Chris Letang is one of them, Patrice Bergeron. So, it's obvious that it was totally different for him. So I believe that he's got a great relationship with Jeff Gorton, and because of that relationship, at one point, Jeff Gorton, when he was hired, asked Kent Hughes, will you consider being the GM of the Montreal Canadiens? And I guess it's exactly when it started. That being said, there was a lot of candidates, no doubts about that, around 10 person Canadians talked to around 10 person during the process. And Kent obviously was part of it. I believe that he was a strong candidate, but they wanted to make sure that if Kent Hughes was not coming in, somebody else could. So that's why they did that process. And I think that Kent Hughes now decided in the last 24 hours that it was probably his best decision was to take the job that was offered to him.
Yeah, something new. I'm sure he's been in the agent game for a long time. He got the opportunity to be the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. It's pretty hard to turn down. So congratulations to Kent.
Exactly.
What do we know about the relationship between Kent Hughes and the current VP there, Jeff Gorton?
Well, they've been talking for the last 20 years. And one thing that I'm hearing a lot here in Montreal, which is totally untrue. Oh, Jeff Gorton hired his best friend. And I'm hearing Jackie laughing, and I understand why. She's saying, well, Renaud, get used to it, right?
That shouldn't be a surprise to you. Rumors are swirling. Get out.
Exactly. But listen, they had a really good, professional relationship. But you know how many times they went to dinner together? They never went to dinner together. They're two guys who love playing golf. They never golfed together. They never played the game. But that being said, I think the level of respect between those two guys is really, really, really high. And Jeff Gorton always, liked the way Kent was just thinking about the game. And Kent was really involved in the game, not only as obviously a manager of his firm, but, and he was an agent, but at the same time, he was coaching his kids, and he coached for a long time. So, he's a guy who really loves the game, and that relationship, to answer your question, started around, I'll say, 20 years ago.
Well, it goes without saying, expectations always high in the city of Montreal for this hockey team. But what are the realistic expectations within the organization for Kent Hughes as the new general manager? We hear all the time, especially in hockey, it's a 5-year plan. It's this, it's that. What are the expectations for Kent Hughes here?
You know what? It will be interesting to see, Jackie, what management is going to decide as a group. Are they going to do a rebuild? So if they're doing a rebuild, it's going to be a long process. If they want to reset on the fly, it could be a little quicker, like the Rangers did in a way. But if you look at the Canadiens right now, they need help. But I believe that if you look at the free agent market this summer, you have a lot of good players available. So it will be really interesting to see what they're going to be capable to do. But I think the first thing that they need to resolve is the future of Carey Price. What's next? Is he going to play this season? Does he want to stay with the Montreal Canadiens? And after that, it will be easier to make a decision on the long term. Because if Carey wants to stay, you're saying to yourself, well, we want to win. We want to win the Stanley Cup as soon as possible. But if Carey is saying, you know what, maybe I want to play elsewhere, you can take another avenue.
Well, that is a major question mark, the future of Carey Price. That is for sure. If you are a Montreal Canadiens fan and you are not following Renaud Lavoie, newsflash, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. You're a fool.
You're a fool. You're a phony.
Stop it.
Renaud, we appreciate you hopping on and giving us the latest on what's going on in Montreal.
Thanks for having me. Enjoy your day.
Renaud Lavoie, one of the best. Well, you know, it's interesting what he brings up, right? And that's really what's going to be the center of this conversation for the Montreal Canadiens is what is the future of Carey Price? Renaud made it sound like, well, it depends what Carey Price wants. But if the organization decides, hey, we're going to do a full-on rebuild here, maybe that impacts how Carey Price feels about staying with the Montreal Canadiens because he's a heck of a goaltender. He has no Stanley Cup.
Yeah, Dave, I mean, I would think if you hear that, if you're Carey Price, probably... Yeah, let's try to get me out of here if possible.
Well, I think it goes. You have to look at it both ways. Jeff Gorton is coming in brand new. He's hired his guy, which is perfect. Your GM hires his guy. He's now got Kent Hughes in. Yeah. You can't look and say, yeah, we want Carey Price. If Carey Price wants to stay, okay, great, let's win a Stanley Cup. Hold on a second here. You're in last place in the National Hockey League. You can't have a goaltender who hasn't played this year saying, yeah, I want to stay, let's win. It's like, whoa. Yeah. Are they even close to winning, getting back to the playoffs? Let alone winning a Stanley Cup. So I think you've got to look and say, even if Carey wants to stay, it might be best to say, you know what, I'm sorry, Carey. We're going to try to move you up because we're going to go in a different direction. Like the free agents, they've got to bring in a whole team. They're the worst team in the National Hockey League right now. Carey Price is Carey Price going to have 20 more wins or 10 more wins for this team? No. They got a long way to go, and they weren't good last year. They wouldn't be in the playoffs last year. They were 17th. Yeah. They got to the Stanley Cup final. I give them all sorts of credit. They played great in the 2 months to get to the Stanley Cup final. But that being said, they're not there right now. So this organization is got a long way to go. And Jeff Gorton and Ken Hughes have got a lot of work. Do you clean house? Brendan Gallagher is another guy. Do you keep Brendan Gallagher? Do you say, okay, we're going to go draft. We're going to go for Shane Wright. We're going to get draft picks, which Jeff Gorton has been very good at with the Rangers of acquiring draft picks. So they've got some years ahead of them. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a new era. And I'm really looking forward to see how the Canadiens start to rework their way back to glory in this fantastic organization.
Yeah, right now they're in assess mode, right? Jeff Gorton and now his new GM. Let's assess what we have, and that doesn't happen overnight, right? You don't just read a couple articles and watch your team a couple times to decide exactly what the future is. So right now that's the job of what they're doing. But Kent Hughes, as a former player agent, something that we have seen before in the National Hockey League, but I'm curious, like, how does an agent make that jump? How do you get yourself there, and what advantage him as a general manager? Well,
he has certainly the idea of what's going on in the player pool, right? Yeah. Because he's dealing with players, and he's been dealing with them for many, many years now. And some really high-end players. Patrice Bergeron is one of them.
Knows the market.
Vinny Lecavalier back in the day. So he's had a lot of really great players. You can see here a number of guys now have made the jump over the years. Bill Zito is doing a fantastic job with the Florida Panthers. That's turned out to be a great hire. Jeff Solomon, he was in the LA Kings organization for many, many years after being an agent, and he was part of that group that won 2 Stanley Cups in LA. Now he is in Anaheim in the interim role. I think they should hire him. I think he'd be a great general manager. He's got a lot of experience in all different areas of the game. We see our own Brian Lawton did that as well. He had a very successful agency as a manager, or excuse me, as an agent. So, it's not uncommon, and I think at the end of the day, remember, Jeff Gorton is still the guy that's overseeing all this stuff. It's this unique setup they have there. I think he'll lean on Kent Hughes. He obviously has a lot of respect for what he has been able to accomplish in his career. And as Dave pointed out, they got a lot of work to do. They've got a lot of contracts that they have to sift through and decide, do we keep these guys? Can we move them? You brought up Brendan Gallagher. I love Brendan Gallagher.
Contract.
Long contract, a lot of money. I don't know if I'm taking that on. For some reason, they signed Mike Hoffman in the offseason this year. I have no earthly idea why. And because, where were they going?
They felt they needed an extra goal or two to win the Stanley Cup.
Well, EJ's reaction tells you how he feels
one guy
I
don't think we saw Pierre Lacroix on that list.
Yeah, and you played for Pierre Lacroix in Colorado.
Pierre Lacroix.
Yeah, Stanley Cup winner a couple
You've got to remember, agents, speak directly with general managers. Like there's a straightforward conversation, and it's not just, I want this much money, goodbye, give it to me, goodbye. No, there's negotiations.
All the time.
And that's where I'm not surprised that agents are moving into this role, because they're negotiating player contracts. They have to know the comparables around the league, within everybody for their clients. So by knowing comparables, you understand every player in the league. And when you understand every player in the league and you're the general manager, well, that's a great way to say, hey, I really like the way this guy's doing. I've checked those comparables. He's just like this guy. Let's go have a look at him. And also, we got to remember, Kent Hughes owns his own organization. He manages people. That's what general managers do. He's got to manage people as well as not just the hockey players. So I think it's a great move. And I love the fact that they're starting a new direction. I thought it was a gutsy move by Jeff Molson to bring in Jeff Gorton, and I think it's a gutsy move now to bring in Kent Hughes, and I think there's good things ahead of Montreal.
All right, well, they officially have their new general manager, Kent Hughes.
Dave Reed with a turtleneck, John Buccigross, it's everywhere. Kent Hughes is not sporting one of those. I'm not sure if he's going to dress as well as his predecessor, but the former agent for Quartex Management is now the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, an NHL player agent for 20-plus years, born in Montreal, bilingual, which was critical. Jeff Gorton, the president, said that had to be a must. He's from the Boston area originally, played college hockey at Middlebury College, that's in Vermont, and a 5-year deal now to turn around this Montreal Canadiens team. With that as pretext, Montreal right now, just to be clear just how bad this team is right now, 19 points. That's dead last in hockey. They're behind even Seattle and Arizona. And how's this for a stat, Jody? They won 7 games so far this year. In the playoffs, they won 13. They might match that over the course of an entire season. That's how bad it is. So the good news for Kent Hughes, hey, nowhere to go but up.
This is not the same team as the playoffs, though. Yeah, come on, Adnan.
Exactly.
It's a completely different animal. I mean, this team has been, you take out the leadership of Shea Weber, if you want to start there, and Carey Price. Yeah. We talk about Edmondson, that defenseman that is such a critical piece. The defensive zone was shored up. Let's just put it that way. And now you're relying on players to come in and out. And look at Paul Byron. He's out a critical piece there. Jake Allen, he's a goalie they're trying to get going. Toffoli was hot to start the year. You take all those pieces out, and the key to me is leadership. And when you don't have it, and you're trying to get Cole Caulfield to be the player he was last year in a special situation with some special players in the locker room, it's just not there. So players playing higher in the depth chart, teams being able to match up against them, and getting the save, not getting the play, not stopping the cycle, not finding momentum. And then it snowballs, Dano, game after game.
Hey, it's been pretty well a disaster. Let's not sugarcoat it this season for the Canadiens. But there are excuses. They're not going to make excuses, but a lot of those players missing key cogs. You're not going to win without Carey Price last year and the success they had and the great Stanley Cup run all the way to the finals. Carey Price was fantastic. Shea Weber was a beast on the back end. That's how they were built. They were difficult to play against, and you're missing so many of those pieces right from the start of the season. Yeah. They just couldn't get on track. All of a sudden now, you mentioned some of the young guys that you thought would take the next step. Well, it hasn't materialized this year. It may very well going into next year or even the second half of this season, but nowhere to go but up. I like that. And for sure, they hire their general manager for 5 years as a player agent. Mm-hmm. He's certainly going to know the CBA inside and out. That's an important element as far as retooling, rebuilding your team along the way. So you'd think Hughes knows a lot about that, right?
Yeah.
Hughes does. And maybe a surprise because we didn't hear his name that much bantered around, did we, guys? No. As far as next general manager of Montreal Canadiens. But you interview a guy, Jeff Gorton, who has a lot of experience. And certainly Montreal
ties to
ownership.
Boston. Yeah.
I remember I go way back to 1988 when our owner, the late, great John McMullen, said, we're bringing in this guy from Providence College named Lou Lamoriello. And everybody goes, who's Lou Lamoriello? Who is this guy? Well, our owner was pretty smart because he brought in a guy that he knew was going to turn the franchise around. Yeah. And they're hoping that certainly he can add some stability. But being a former agent, I would think would be very helpful in the general manager's position because you know a lot about contracts, a lot about the salary cap and certain issues and all the minutia that goes behind the scenes. That's way above my pay grade, Jody. But certainly they get their man, I guess.
I like it for Gorton, too, because, Gorton obviously trusts him.
Yeah.
He's got a guy that can work with him. And for Hughes, first-time general manager in the National Hockey League, why wouldn't you want to work with Jeff Gorton? I mean, he is the president, but he's got such a great pedigree. He was a quiet guy in New York. You didn't see a lot of Gort's, but he got it done. He did some good things there. And I shouldn't say got it done. He did some great things there.
No question.
Look at all those greats represented by Kent Hughes.
Cavalier.
And for him now to learn and be a part of it, it's you can get a couple of these guys.
Are you surprised, Adnan? I'm going to throw it back on you. I mean, because you heard his name, but you just never expect. We always expect the name.
Sexier names, yeah.
Sexier name that's right in front of us.
Right.
But sometimes that's not the right decision. You make a decision based on an interview and go, hey, he said all the right things. This is our guy.
Yeah.
Obviously. So it'll be interesting moving forward with the Montreal Canadiens. But we wish him the best. I think he can do a great job. He's got a lot of experience with players.
Yep.
And being a former agent, like we mentioned, so it'll be fun for him. It'll be a tall task, though.
It's always interesting in Quebec, though, because the bilingual piece is critical, right? Like, this is a French language province, so you got to be able to work in both languages, got the respect of your peers. I don't think it was going to be Patrick Waugh. Like, you hear these names bandied about, but I thought maybe a former Hab, someone with ties to the organization. So, listen, Gortz knows what he's doing. Clearly, they're confident about it. The other thing I want to mention, too, their prospects, Caden Gooley, Matthias Norlinder, Jordan Harris, pretty good with their defensemen. Caden Primo, future goalie. So that's the one thing. A bad year, but here are the guys. When you look at it, the first thing that stood to me, Dano, defense out. 3 defensemen and a goalie. That could be good news for them.
Well, they drafted Caden Goulet in 2020 in the first round, and they have high hopes. He's a top prospect for sure.
Right.
I wouldn't say the Montreal Canadiens prospect pool is near the top or in the top 10.
Correct.
I mean, just reading guys a lot sharper than me throughout the National Hockey League. But that, where they're at, but you never know. That can change quickly.
Yeah.
And that's why you want to have the right leaders running your management team, and Jeff Gorton was put in place to hire the right general manager, and you just have to make sure you develop these young players as well as draft well, right?
Yeah, Shane Wright sweepstakes right there. I mean, they played Arizona this week. They lost. I mean, that's kind of, the players don't want to hear it. I mean, they're trying to win. The coaches are trying to win. But going in as a new general manager, new president, that's exactly what they're looking at. What's in the cupboard? What are pieces they can add with? Maybe trade pieces, what they need to move along. And Montreal, I don't think they're very patient.
I was just going to say,
I think that there's
Montreal and
better be a retool, not a rebuild.
Such the hockey market that is,
no question,
which is second to none. It's win at all costs, but I think you have to have a little bit of a balancing act here. You have to be careful not to trade too many prospects or pieces away. And I think with the hiring of Kent Hughes and the hiring of Jeff Gorton as president, I think he's going to understand that look. We want to be competitive next year, or even maybe the rest of the way this season, somewhat, but we're not going to mortgage the future for long-term success.
Yeah. By the way, Gooley, your kind of guy. Captain in Team Canada, top 4 defenseman, size, character. That's
I love that pick.
Yeah.
When the Montreal Canadiens had it. It took him at 20.
No doubt.